Mistress burned pregnant wife's wedding dress, but the millionaire's reaction was unexpected. On the surface, the Donovan family was a picture of refined elegance, blessed with influence, success, and what seemed like an everlasting bond of love. Yet behind the gilded gates of their estate in Palo Alto, secrets simmered, secrets so potent they threatened to unravel every careful stitch of their perfect tapestry. It began as whispers, a rumor that millionaire Julian Donovan was entangled in a scandalous affair. Few anticipated how destructive it would become, culminating in the day his mistress brazenly torched the wedding gown of Julian's pregnant wife. This story delves into the chaos sparked by betrayal and an outcome no one foresaw. Julian Donovan was born to humble roots in a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Houston, Texas. His father, Richard Donovan, ran a small auto repair shop, while his mother, Pamela Donovan, juggled shifts as a part-time nurse at the local clinic. Even from a young age, Julian showed a spirited hunger for business, selling snacks to classmates and negotiating deals at neighborhood garage sales. Despite constant financial strain, the Donovans encouraged their children to chase lofty dreams. That unwavering support, coupled with Julian's fierce determination, would later propel him from rags to riches and place him at the epicenter of a seismic personal drama. In high school, Julian distinguished himself not just academically, but as a budding entrepreneur. He organized fundraisers for the debate club, ensuring he had a say in everything from snack sales to event advertising. When he was just 16, he launched a modest e-commerce venture reselling collectible sports memorabilia. The business started in his bedroom, overshadowed by stacks of vintage baseball cards and old sports magazines, but it soon amassed enough profit to catch the attention of his peers and even local news. This ambition fueled his acceptance into a prestigious business program at Stanford University, a place known for breeding Silicon Valley innovators. Stanford proved a crucible that refined Julian's ambition into a true entrepreneurial edge. Surrounded by sharp minds and disruptive ideas, he found himself exhilarated. He spent late nights attending startup meetups, pitch events, and leadership seminars. It was there he met Andrew Lockhart, a gifted programmer whose fascination with machine learning paired seamlessly with Julian's knack for financial strategy. The two envisioned a platform artisan link that would connect small businesses to a global pool of freelance creatives. Before graduation, they secured impressive venture capital backing, marking the first step of what would become an astonishingly rapid rise to prominence. Elena Garcia entered Julian's life on an unassuming spring afternoon during a campus-wide event highlighting eco-friendly initiatives. While many meandered by the exhibits, Julian was drawn to one particular display, a scale model of green urban housing. Its architect, Elena, an architecture student who championed sustainability in every blueprint she drafted. Their initial conversation covered everything from climate activism to philanthropic investments. Julian found himself entranced by Elena's warm, thoughtful manner and her unwavering drive to serve communities often overlooked by big development. Their bond felt immediate, as though they recognized in each other an ambition tempered by empathy. Born in San Diego to Miguel and Laura Garcia, Elena grew up immersed in a loving environment centered on community and education. Miguel ran a small construction company, renowned for its ethical labor practices, while Laura was a Spanish literature professor. From her father, Elena inherited a fascination with structural integrity. From her mother, a love for storytelling and cultural heritage. This dual influence showed in Elena's designs. Every building she imagined carried meaning beyond aesthetics, focusing on how people lived, interacted, and built memories within those walls. Julian, ever the strategist, saw Elena not just as a partner in life, but as someone who inspired him to think bigger than profit margins. Their romance burgeoned under the Californian sun, each date unveiling new layers of mutual admiration. Within 2 years of meeting, Julian proposed to Elena during a private rooftop dinner in San Francisco. A local violinist serenaded them under fairy lights, surrounded by bouquets of lavender, Elena's favorite flower. Tears of joy welled in Elena's eyes as she accepted, setting social media abuzz when word of their engagement spread through their Stanford network. Despite the superficial glitz, sprawling city views, and artisanal cuisine, what truly mattered to them was the shared future they had decided to forge together. The wedding took place at a picturesque vineyard in Napa Valley. Elena wore a custom-made gown by a rising designer who specialized in ethically sourced materials, aligning perfectly with her ethos. The dress, off-white with lace detailing, sparkled under the gentle sunlight. As Elena walked down the aisle, Julian felt an overwhelming sense of awe. Memories of that modest Houston upbringing rushed through his mind, clashing with the opulence of the day. Their vows captured everyone's heart, each word a promise woven from love, respect, and commitment to forging a better world. The day ended in celebratory fireworks, an apt metaphor for the explosive journey that lay ahead. For a time, life was pure bliss. Artisan Link's success soared beyond anyone's predictions. Under Julian's leadership and Andrew's technical prowess, the company expanded its client base worldwide. Elena's architectural designs caught attention for their functional beauty and low environmental impact, winning her accolades in emerging architect contests. They moved into a breathtaking home in Palo Alto, complete with an expansive garden that Elena tended passionately. Weekends were their sacred time, no business calls, no emails, just open-air brunches and meaningful conversations. But even the strongest steel can crack under unrelenting pressure, and cracks had begun quietly and invisibly. Those cracks materialized through Julian's relentless travel schedule. Artisan Link targeted new markets in Europe, Asia, and beyond, requiring constant negotiations and investor meetings abroad. Andrew advised Julian to build a larger executive team so he could focus on strategic decisions rather than day-to-day tasks. But Julian's controlling nature wouldn't let go. He believed that without him at the helm, deals would fall through. This tenacity initially won admiration, but soon sparked tension at home. Elena felt the weight of his absences, longing for the steady companionship they had shared at the start of their journey. Camilla Reeves came into their lives under the guise of professional support. Recommended by a mutual contact, she was a public relations consultant with an impeccable track record. She boasted an impressive Rolodex of media connections, claiming her father was a powerful diplomat with channels into exclusive circles. Camilla was confident, quick to flatter, and seemed to possess an almost uncanny knack for aligning narratives to Julian's favor. Initially, Elena appreciated Camilla's finesse. Thanks to her, Artisan Link's philanthropic initiatives and Elena's sustainable housing designs gained favorable press coverage. Yet an inexplicable discomfort accompanied Camilla's sugary words. Elena's instincts warned her about the woman's disingenuous charm, though she couldn't pinpoint the source of her unease. As Artisan Link's international profile expanded, Camilla's role escalated. She traveled with Julian to tech conferences and investor symposiums, coordinating interviews and social events that painted the company in a positive light. The woman's approach to PR went beyond conventional press releases. She orchestrated lavish parties, curated influencers, and made sure the brand's philanthropic gestures were prominently highlighted. On social media, snapshots of Julian standing beside Camilla at chic galas began surfacing. Although Elena trusted her husband, the repeated images of his interactions with Camilla chipped away at her peace of mind. Each like, comment, and share felt like a pinprick in what had once been an unshakable bond. Communication between Julian and Elena, once effortless, grew sporadic and strained. Their cherished Sunday brunch tradition was often derailed by urgent conference calls or unplanned flights. When Elena tried addressing her concerns, Julian would dodge the subject, attributing his behavior to the demands of a rapidly growing enterprise. He assured her that once the expansion phase stabilized, they could return to normalcy. The looming question was, how long would that take, and at what cost? Meanwhile, Elena busied herself with architectural projects, occasionally collaborating with non-profits that built eco-friendly homes in low-income areas. It was fulfilling work, but loneliness still gnawed at her in the quiet of night. Then came the moment that blindsided Julian. Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news should have been a source of joy and celebration. Yet each time Elena attempted to share this life-changing development with him, they found themselves caught in the tumult of never-ending crises, fluctuating stock prices, urgent investor calls, or sudden PR emergencies, expertly handled by Camilla. Days melted into weeks, and Elena's frustration grew. She yearned to see the excitement in Julian's eyes, to be folded into his arms, and reassured that, despite their busy schedules, they were still in this together. When Elena finally told Julian about the pregnancy, she had orchestrated a warm candlelit dinner at home. Soft jazz played in the background, and she had dressed in a sleek black gown that accentuated her natural glow. The table was set with their finest china, a testament to her desire for this to be an extraordinary moment. However, Julian arrived exhausted and visibly preoccupied. He explained he had just flown in from London that morning and had spent the afternoon locked in intense negotiations. Undeterred, Elena gently broke the news. "We're having a baby." Julian froze, a swirl of emotion crossing his face: surprise, awe, and something she deciphered as apprehension. In the days following her announcement, Julian's behavior was inconsistent. Sometimes he seemed genuinely moved, running out to purchase prenatal vitamins or reading up on nutrition for expecting mothers. But at other times, Elena caught him lost in thought, eyes distant. When she probed, he muttered about looming business deadlines, refusing to articulate his deeper worries. Elena felt an ache in her chest. Where was the man who'd once orchestrated a star-studded rooftop proposal? Where was the excitement she expected? She clung to hope, trusting that the chaos of the moment would pass. But doubt seeped in. Drop by drop, into this emotional vacuum stepped Camilla. The more absent Julian seemed at home, the closer Camilla got to him professionally. Their phone calls extended late into the night, with Camilla insisting that every detail of their global expansion be meticulously coordinated to perfection. People within Artisan Link started whispering about their close rapport. Andrew Lockhart, who had known Julian for nearly a decade, grew wary. While he had no concrete evidence of an affair, something about the chemistry between Julian and Camilla didn't feel like mere professional synergy. Tension loomed, palpable enough to unsettle even the most oblivious observers. Elena decided to confirm or dispel her worst fears. She planned a surprise lunch visit to Julian's office at Redwood and Finch, a renowned law firm where a crucial meeting with investors was taking place. Armed with a gourmet meal from his favorite bistro and a bouquet of fragrant lilies, she took the elevator to the 28th floor. Her heart pounded in anticipation, a script of how she would greet him dancing in her mind. Yet as she stepped into the reception area, she halted upon glimpsing Julian and Camilla locked in a disturbingly intimate conversation. She thought she saw Camilla's hand graze Julian's arm in a manner that felt uncomfortably personal. The sense of betrayal that coursed through Elena was immediate, as if ice water had been poured into her veins. Unwilling to create a spectacle, Elena backed away, her breath coming in ragged, shallow intervals. Adrenaline surged, and her grip on the lunch bag tightened. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but her pulse hammered in her ears, drowning out rational thought. When Julian turned away, heading toward the conference room, Camilla lingered briefly, a confident smirk curving her lips. Elena's stomach twisted in knots. The moment felt surreal, like an out-of-body experience. She dropped the idea of surprising him, leaving the office before anyone noticed she'd been there. In the elevator, tears threatened to escape, but she blinked them back fiercely. Back at home, Elena's mind spiraled. The pregnancy hormones heightened her emotional turbulence, making every doubt feel cataclysmic. She paced the living room, replaying that brief scene in her head. The plausible explanations seemed inadequate. Was she overreacting? Could it have been a simple misunderstanding between colleagues? Her instincts, honed by the small personal revelations of Julian's increasing distance, suggested otherwise. Worse, she felt a new kind of loneliness, the dread that she, a pregnant wife, might be losing her husband to someone who navigated his world of business and PR as if she were the perfect accessory. That evening, Julian came home late, muttering about a post-meeting dinner with investors that ran longer than expected. He offered Elena a cursory kiss on the forehead. She yearned to confront him, but the fear of seeming paranoid held her back. Instead, she went to bed early, the taste of unsaid words bitter in her mouth. Over the next week, her mental anguish only deepened. She found dinner receipts from upscale restaurants she had never visited, suspicious text notifications popping up on Julian's phone, and a seeming avalanche of reasons for him to spend just one more night working late with Camilla. Unable to endure the silence, Elena finally confronted Julian with tears stinging her eyes. "I think you're getting too close to Camilla," she stated, her voice quivering. Julian bristled at the accusation. He insisted that Camilla was crucial for Artisan Link's expansions and global reputation. In a condescending tone, he accused Elena of mistrust and jealousy. Refusing to let him dismiss her, Elena recounted what she saw at Redwood and Finch, but Julian scoffed that she was blowing an innocuous moment out of proportion. The conversation ended in a stalemate, with Elena feeling more isolated than ever. In desperation, Elena called Andrew Lockhart to confide in him. Though reluctant at first, Andrew admitted that some employees speculated about an affair. He emphasized that he had no concrete proof, but he offered a gentle warning: Julian isn't himself lately. He's pushing harder than ever, chasing expansions and allowing Camilla to overshadow boundaries. "Be careful, Elena." The conversation left Elena both validated and terrified. In a single day, her illusions about her marriage and the father of her unborn child began to crumble. She realized she might be forced to decide between silently enduring or taking a stand to protect herself and the child she carried. Eventually, Elena decided she could delay no longer. On a stormy night, thunder clashing in the distance, she mustered the courage to lay everything bare. When Julian returned from yet another corporate dinner, reeking of expensive cologne and bourbon, Elena confronted him in the living room. As lightning illuminated her face, she told him, voice trembling, that they had to talk about their future. "I'm pregnant, and I want to believe you still want us," she said, tears blurring her vision. Julian stared at her, seeming caught off guard by the intensity of her despair. Their exchange was brief, but it ended in a promise he would try harder to be transparent and attentive. For a fleeting week, it seemed as though Julian was making an effort. He joined Elena for a prenatal appointment, read through pamphlets on healthy pregnancies, and even surprised her with thoughtful gifts. But Camilla's name still hovered like a spectre in their daily lives. Elena tried to dismiss her doubts, hoping that perhaps Julian's initial reaction had just been shock. She told herself that if the baby could bring them closer, they might survive this turbulent chapter. The illusions faltered one afternoon, though, when she stumbled upon an email in Julian's tablet, Camilla inviting him to a romantic hideaway in Rome, describing a private suite they could enjoy together after a conference. Reading those words, Elena felt physically ill. The message made it clear there was more than just business between Julian and Camilla. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the device. She reread the email multiple times, each phrase slicing deeper. There was no more room for denial. She marched into their bedroom to confront Julian, only to find it empty. Overwhelmed, she nearly collapsed onto the bed, tears streaming. Later that night, Julian arrived home. Elena tried to summon the nerve to confront him right away, but the pain was so raw that she thought she might completely break down. She decided she needed a plan before she hurled accusations. The next day, Elena booked a couples therapy session with Dr. Marianne Fletcher, a well-regarded psychologist in Palo Alto. She persuaded Julian to attend, hoping a neutral environment might force honesty. In the session, Dr. Fletcher asked them to articulate their fears and frustrations. Elena brought up the Rome email. Julian's face paled. He tried to pass it off as PR strategy, claiming Camilla was just overstepping her role. Dr. Fletcher pressed him on the apparent intimacy, but he deflected. The hour concluded with no resolution, only heightened tension. Elena left feeling a suffocating sense that she was rapidly losing the man she once adored. Unable to handle the charade any longer, Elena reached out to her parents. Laura Garcia, her mother, implored her to come stay with them in San Diego for a while, at least until she could clear her head. Tired of battling tears every night, Elena agreed. She left a note for Julian, stating she needed space to think, then packed her belongings and drove south. As she pulled away from the driveway, her wedding band felt heavier than ever, a symbol of a vow she feared was beyond repair. Her unborn child, however, fueled her determination. She had to preserve her own well-being for the baby's sake. At her childhood home, Elena found a modicum of peace. The familiar scent of homemade tortillas and her mother's supportive embrace brought her comfort. Each evening she took walks along the beach, listening to the rhythmic crash of waves. She ran her hands over her growing belly, whispering silent promises that she would give this child all the love and stability it deserved. Meanwhile, Julian called sporadically, leaving voicemails pleading for her return. She seldom answered. Every conversation threatened to fracture the delicate calm she was desperately trying to maintain. Some nights, she found herself rereading the email from Camilla, reliving the hurt anew. Days turned into weeks, and Julian's messages took on a more urgent tone. He confessed he was lost without her, that Artisan Link's success felt hollow if she was not at his side. He even visited San Diego once, waiting for hours outside the Garcia home. Elena watched him through a window, her heart pounding. She still felt a magnetic pull toward him. He was her husband, the father of her child, a man she had built her dreams around. Yet the memory of Camilla's email eroded her resolve to open the door. Ultimately, she stayed indoors, tears in her eyes, wishing life had taken a gentler turn. All the while, Camilla dug her claws deeper into Julian's life. She enjoyed the newfound closeness in the business sphere and pushed for more extravagant events, more press coverage. Andrew became increasingly alarmed, witnessing Julian's uncharacteristic decisions, authorizing extravagant PR budgets, underwriting lavish overseas trips that seemed more personal than corporate. Rumors buzzed through Artisan Link's corridors, employees suspecting that their boss was entangled in a messy personal saga. Andrew tried to intervene quietly, reminding Julian that the company's reputation was on the line. But Julian, consumed by the dual crises of a failing marriage and Camilla's beguiling presence, brushed Andrew aside. Eventually, news outlets picked up on the cracks in Julian's personal life. Speculative articles appeared, branding him as another tech mogul embroiled in scandal. Some even showed Camilla's social media photos, insinuating they were more than colleagues. The stress weighed heavily on Julian, and in a panicked attempt to control the narrative, he continued to rely on Camilla's expert PR maneuvers. She drafted statements that positioned Elena's absence as a routine family visit, while highlighting how Julian and Camilla were championing global philanthropic projects. The spin felt grotesque to those who knew the truth, including Andrew, who quietly seethed but struggled to protect his friend from self-destruction. One night, Elena received a frantic call from her neighbor in Palo Alto, Miss S. Beaumont. She claimed there had been smoke coming from Elena's backyard. Startled, Elena asked for details. Miss S. Beaumont described a strange scene. A tall, elegantly dressed woman was tossing something into a fire pit, ignoring local regulations that banned open fires without permits. Before the fire department arrived, the woman hurried away, leaving behind a smoldering pile. Concerned, Miss S. Beaumont investigated and discovered scorched remnants of fabric, a wedding dress. She suspected, based on the fragments of lace and beads. The shock in Miss S. Beaumont's voice was palpable, and Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Racing back to Palo Alto the next day, Elena arrived at the once happy home she had shared with Julian. The yard smelled of ash, and the remains of her treasured wedding dress lay charred in the fire pit. The delicate lace that once symbolized a hopeful future was now irreparably destroyed. Elena sank to her knees, hot tears streaking her cheeks. Every memory of her wedding day flashed before her eyes, the vow they had made, the love that bloomed that afternoon at the vineyard. It was as if Camilla had torched not just a gown, but the heart of Elena's marriage. A potent gesture of malice and triumph. Sensing Elena's devastation, Miss S. Beaumont approached her gently, offering words of comfort and confirming that she had seen Camilla. Shaking with anger, Elena photographed the damage, determined to confront Julian with undeniable proof of Camilla's escalating hostility. She refused to let her heartbreak paralyze her into inaction. The dress was gone, but the child inside her remained very real. Fury combined with maternal protectiveness, forging a new kind of strength in Elena, one that made her realize she had every right to demand accountability. Julian returned from a business trip later that evening, disheveled and jet-lagged. He found Elena in the living room, the remnants of the gown laid out like damning evidence. Before he could speak, Elena hurled the photos at him, her voice shaking with rage. Look at what she did. Julian stared at the images, his face whitening. He asked if she was certain it was Camilla. Elena repeated Mistress Beaumont's eyewitness account. The horror in Julian's eyes betrayed a realization he had been too blind or too complicit to see. Camilla was not merely a business partner, she was a threat, a time bomb that had just detonated. In the tense aftermath, Julian found himself caught between guilt and shock. He tried to apologize, stumbling over words, but the apology felt flimsy against the backdrop of such a cruel act. Elena was incandescent with fury. This was my wedding dress, Julian, the one I wore to promise you forever. She burned it while I'm pregnant with your child. Her anguish sliced through the air like a knife. For the first time, Julian realized the magnitude of the devastation he had helped set in motion. He pledged to cut ties with Camilla, to fix things with Elena. But Elena, pressing a protective hand to her belly, wasn't sure there was anything left to salvage. Camilla's reaction upon being confronted by Julian was venomous. She sneered at him, mocking Elena's heartbreak. "I was just clearing out the past," she reportedly said, boasting that she'd moved the dress herself to the backyard pit. Her contempt stunned Julian, leaving him grappling with the cold reality. He had invited a toxic force into his life, jeopardizing not only his marriage, but also the emotional well-being of his unborn child. At that moment, the glamour of Camilla's PR wizardry vanished. All that remained was a chilling recognition that his worst betrayal had led him to align with a woman who reveled in cruelty. Amid the maelstrom, Andrew Lockhart stepped in, quietly offering Elena help in filing a restraining order against Camilla. He also insisted that Artisan Link's board consider severing any remaining contracts with her. Andrew wasn't just acting on moral grounds, he feared for the company's reputation. A scandal of this magnitude could scare off potential investors, triggering financial repercussions. That said, Andrew was motivated equally by empathy for Elena, whom he regarded as a genuine, kind-hearted person who didn't deserve this anguish. Elena found solace in Andrew's support, though she maintained a cautious distance from Julian. Every day, she struggled to imagine a future in which she could trust him again. Her pregnancy advanced steadily, a tangible reminder that she had precious responsibilities. She attended ultrasound appointments alone, determined to protect herself and the child from further emotional turmoil. When nurses asked if the father would be joining, Elena offered half smiles, aware of the heartbreak behind her eyes. That heartbreak deepened when the results confirmed she was carrying a baby girl, a life she had once dreamt would be welcomed by loving, unified parents. Meanwhile, Julian's introspection grew relentless. He took a temporary leave of absence from Artisan Link, allowing Andrew to handle most executive decisions. Solitude in the otherwise empty Palo Alto house confronted him with the echoes of the life he had built and nearly ruined. Memories of simpler days invaded his thoughts, packing up old baseball cards in his bedroom, forging a future with Elena when they were college sweethearts. Now, those memories felt tainted by guilt. Even his once treasured ambitions seemed hollow. He recognized that while success had brought him wealth, it had also opened a chasm in his moral compass, and Camilla had capitalized on those vulnerabilities. Camilla, however, refused to fade quietly. Enraged by Julian's decision to cut her off, she threatened to release personal photos of them together to the tabloid press. She demanded compensation, claiming he owed her for damaging her professional credibility. With a siege mentality, Julian and Andrew scrambled to contain the fallout. Lawyers drafted cease and desist letters, while security protocols were tightened at Artisan Link's offices. Still, every day felt like treading on eggshells. The possibility that Camilla might escalate her revenge loomed large, especially after her brazen act of arson with the wedding dress. In a move that surprised everyone, Julian reached out to Elena through her parents, asking for a formal mediation session. He wanted to settle matters of their marriage, financial assets, and their unborn child's future with legal professionals present. Elena, initially resistant, ultimately agreed it was an opportunity to ensure her child's security, if nothing else. The mediation day arrived, the atmosphere thick with tension. Julian arrived looking fatigued, his typically sharp suit slightly disheveled. Elena, clad in a simple maternity dress, radiated both vulnerability and quiet strength. For hours, lawyers debated custody, property division, and the possibility of a restraining order to keep Camilla at bay. Yet amid the stoic legal formalities, a surprising moment of honesty emerged. Julian admitted he had lost his way, seduced by ambition and the thrill of external validation. He apologized for hurting Elena, acknowledging he had shattered her trust in ways he wasn't certain he could ever repair. Despite the rawness of the confession, Elena felt a subtle shift, an inkling of genuine remorse. The session ended with no definitive conclusion regarding their marriage, but they agreed on temporary arrangements for child support, medical expenses, and dividing time in the Palo Alto home. Though Elena returned to San Diego afterward, she noticed small but significant changes in Julian's behavior. He no longer attended lavish events. Instead, he remained mostly in Palo Alto, focusing on therapy and personal growth. He joined a men's accountability group where participants confronted their own faults and failings. Sometimes, late at night, he left voicemails for Elena that sounded broken, confessing he despised himself for hurting her. Elena, often listening with tears in her eyes, felt her ironclad resolve soften slightly. She didn't know if she could forgive, but she sensed a sincerity in Julian that she hadn't witnessed in months. Then came a crisis that overshadowed everything else. In her 7th month of pregnancy, Elena experienced sharp abdominal pains. She was rushed to the hospital, diagnosed with preeclampsia, a condition that can be dangerous if untreated. Miguel and Laura stayed by her side, their worried faces reflecting the seriousness of the situation. Upon hearing the news, Julian drove through the night to reach San Diego. He arrived at the hospital in wrinkled clothes, unshaven, with red-rimmed eyes that broadcast fear. He hovered at her bedside, holding her hand, softly whispering apologies and assurances that he would be there. He stayed in the waiting room through the night, dozing fitfully in a chair. Thankfully, the doctors managed to stabilize Elena's condition, advising strict bed rest and minimal stress. This health scare jolted both Elena and Julian, reminding them that life was precarious and none of their financial success or property holdings mattered if they couldn't ensure their baby's well-being. Over the course of that hospital stay, Julian's devotion manifested in practical ways. He coordinated with the nurses, fetched medications, and insisted on paying for a specialized OB-GYN consult. For the first time in a long time, Elena saw shades of the husband she had fallen in love with: protective, earnest, and gentle. Elena's recovery continued at her parents' home, where Julian offered to move in temporarily to help. Though initially hesitant, Elena recognized the practicality. She needed assistance, and her father was away at work most of the day while her mother juggled teaching commitments. Under the same roof, they navigated a fragile coexistence. Julian slept in the guest room, never overstepping his boundaries. Each morning he cooked healthy breakfasts, whisking up spinach omelets or oatmeal with blueberries. Each evening he helped Elena monitor her blood pressure and ensured she took her medication on time. Step by step, an unspoken partnership formed. In quieter moments, they discussed baby names, weighed in on nursery color schemes, and shared fleeting laughs about their college memories. Elena watched Julian cradle her belly, his eyes shining whenever he felt the baby kick. For months, she had craved this sense of unity, but bitterness still lingered. Could she trust that this wasn't just a passing phase, that he wouldn't revert to the man whose obsession with growth had caused so much damage? Therapy, they decided, might be the best chance at forging a path forward. Julian found a local counselor they both respected, and they began attending weekly sessions. Under the guidance of Dr. Marianne Fletcher, who had relocated to Southern California, temporarily due to a family matter, Julian and Elena waded through the wreckage of their broken bond. Julian explained how the lure of global recognition had fed a sense of invincibility, making him vulnerable to Camilla's flattery. Elena admitted that she sometimes wondered if her own professional successes or moral high ground pushed Julian away, though Dr. Fletcher gently pointed out that the root cause lay primarily in Julian's choices. Bit by bit, illusions fell away, exposing raw truths and creating room for a tentative kind of healing. While the emotional wounds slowly mended, Camilla still lurked in the background. News arrived that she had attempted to sue Artisan Link for alleged contractual breaches. Andrew's legal team methodically dismantled her claims, emphasizing she'd been compensated in full before she took her revengeful actions. Frustrated, Camilla made one last play, leaking intimate texts and photos to a minor gossip rag. This time, the public seemed largely uninterested. The novelty of the scandal had worn off, and readers had grown apathetic to the high society drama. Angered by the lukewarm reception and stymied by legal pushback, Camilla finally receded, her malicious influence sputtering out. By Elena's 8th month of pregnancy, she and Julian had reached a fragile yet promising truce. They communicated more openly, acknowledging the heartbreak and betrayal, but also recognizing a newfound sense of honesty. Julian continued to scale back his involvement at Artisan Link, shifting more responsibility to Andrew. He spent more hours reading about parenthood, focusing on how to support a partner who had been hurt. Elena, still uncertain about their marital future, resolved to keep evaluating his actions rather than his words. She derived comfort from the fact that their child would be born into a space where conflict had at least receded. The final stretch of pregnancy was both nerve-wracking and awe-inspiring. The baby's kicks intensified, and Elena struggled with discomfort and sleepless nights. Julian remained by her side, offering foot rubs, adjusting pillows, and preparing teas rumored to ease swelling. On quiet afternoons, they played gentle music for the baby, sharing soft smiles whenever the stirring inside Elena's belly synchronized with the melody. And though neither dared to call their dynamic fully healed, the undertone of mutual care felt real, tangible enough to carry them through the final weeks of waiting. When Elena finally went into labor, it happened in the early morning hours. She woke to sharp, rhythmic pains and realized the moment they had been preparing for had arrived. Julian roused her parents, hurriedly packed the hospital bag, and navigated the pre-dawn roads to the nearest medical center. Anxiety thrummed in the car, underscored by Elena's labored breathing and Julian's trembling hands on the steering wheel. At the hospital, doctors confirmed she was in active labor, and given her earlier complications, they kept a close watch. Julian dressed in scrubs, staying resolutely by her side, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. Labor was long and arduous, stretching into nearly 20 hours. Elena breathed through contractions, a mixture of pain and anticipation flooding her senses. Julian counted aloud, helped her with breathing exercises, and wiped the sweat from her brow. Occasionally, Elena flashed back to the heartbreak he had caused, but the rawness of this moment reminded her that people can be multifaceted, capable of both wounding and healing. When at last the baby's cries filled the delivery room, a collective exhale followed. A wave of relief and wonder washed over them. Their daughter was here, tiny, red-faced, and perfect. In the hush that followed, the doctors placed the baby girl in Elena's arms. She was swaddled in a soft blanket, blinking up at the world with wide, curious eyes. Julian stood close, tears streaming down his cheeks as he caressed the newborn's forehead. Elena felt a rush of love, a certainty that she would move heaven and earth for this child. Despite the heartbreak, the shock, the burned dress, and the betrayal, new life had a way of illuminating possibilities. As mother and father, they both sensed the magnitude of the responsibility they now shared. They named her Sophia Marisol Donovan, weaving together nods to both families. The following days at the hospital melded exhaustion with euphoria. Elena's body ached, her emotions fluctuating, but each time she gazed at Sophia, she found renewed strength. Julian assumed the role of caretaker, ensuring Elena rested, changing Sophia's diapers, and running out for whichever postpartum supplies the nurses recommended. Friends and family sent flowers and messages of support. Even Andrew dropped by, beaming as he held the tiny bundle, marveling at how this new life could symbolize hope after such tumultuous months. Returning to Elena's parents' home with Sophia, they attempted to navigate the fragile beginnings of co-parenting. Late-night feedings provided the background for raw conversations. Some nights, Elena would tear up while cradling Sophia, remembering her wedding dress consumed by flames. Other nights, Julian expressed his profound regret, emphasizing that he would devote himself to making amends, not just with words, but with tangible consistency. Their therapy sessions continued, sometimes focusing on forging a joint plan for Sophia's future. They discussed everything from how they'd handle discipline to whether they should eventually move back to Palo Alto. Through these tender, weary weeks, Elena observed Julian closely. She noticed the small gestures, how he respectfully asked, before entering her room, if she was nursing, how he quietly took on chores, and how he never once shirked from a 2am diaper change. He sought additional counseling on his own, exploring why he had given in to temptation, how stress had become a toxic driver in his life, and what boundaries he needed in the future to prevent a relapse into arrogance and betrayal. Gradually, Elena found her anger overshadowed by a cautious appreciation for his sustained efforts. One evening, as Sophia slept soundly, Julian invited Elena to sit outside beneath the starlight. With the ocean's hush in the distance, he opened a small wooden box containing mementos from their relationship, the first movie ticket stub they shared, a dried flower from her graduation, and a Polaroid snapshot from their engagement party. Stunned, Elena sifted through these tokens of a happier time. Julian then read a heartfelt note he had written, a promise to uphold the vows he once broke. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. She recalled the charred remains of her gown, but she also felt hope break through the darkness. Like dawn after a terrifying night, healing, however, wasn't a single epiphany. In the subsequent weeks, Elena wavered between moments of renewed trust and flashes of doubt. If Julian needed to travel for business, her mind dredged up images of him in foreign hotel bars with Camilla or someone like her. To help bolster faith, they established rules, open communication, location-sharing apps, and frequent video calls whenever he was away. Paradoxically, these measures strengthened their bond, proving that trust could be rebuilt piece by painstaking piece. Julian no longer grumbled about what he once would have considered an invasion of privacy. He saw it as a testament to his commitment to reconciliation. Sophia grew, blossoming into an energetic infant who giggled at the silliest faces. At times, she would wail inconsolably, and Julian's paternal instincts shone through. In those tear-filled nights, Elena found an unexpected comfort, Julian's unwavering presence. She watched him pace the living room with Sophia, humming lullabies or gently rocking her back to sleep. Parenting together forged a connection that all the drama, tears, and counseling sessions alone couldn't replicate. They were a team, united by a vulnerable life that needed both of them, reminding them daily of the stakes at hand. During one poignant therapy session, Dr. Fletcher introduced the concept of creating new memories. "Your wedding dress was stolen from you in an act of hostility," she said, addressing Elena directly, "but new symbols can replace what was lost." Touched by the idea, Julian proposed a vow renewal someday, not immediately, but when Elena felt ready. The suggestion elicited a wave of emotion in Elena, part grief for the dress she'd never get back, part cautious optimism about building something new. She didn't give him a definitive answer, but admitted that she was open to the possibility in the future. While the legal battles against Camilla had mostly cooled, scattered rumors still flickered online. Occasionally, Elena received an anonymous social media message or a link to a salacious article rehashing the scandal. These triggers threatened to open old wounds. Yet each time, Julian approached the situation with transparency and empathy, reassuring Elena there were no new secrets to hide. Ironically, the fiasco had forced him to refine his priorities, safeguarding his family. Now trumped any ambition to become the next billionaire mogul. Andrew's adept handling of Artisan Link gave him the freedom to put family first, a pivot that might have seemed unthinkable a year earlier. As the months rolled on, Elena gradually agreed to spend time in Palo Alto, testing the waters of returning home. The property still carried the echoes of happier times and the ghost of Camilla's destruction. Their first night back was difficult, as Elena's memories clashed sharply with the stark reality of what had transpired. But Julian had redecorated parts of the house with a soothing color scheme, replacing furniture they had once chosen jointly. The transformation was more than aesthetic, it was symbolic of turning a new leaf. He even planted a rose bush in the backyard, hoping to replace the memory of flames with something that could grow beautifully over time. In that home, they decided to host a small family gathering, inviting both the Garcias and the Donovans to welcome Sophia properly. At first, Elena felt anxious. Would the reminders of the wedding gown overshadow the event? But as guests filled the living room, cooing over Sophia, the atmosphere warmed. Laughter, clinking glasses, and heartfelt toasts echoed in the air. Richard Donovan pulled his son aside, murmuring words of pride at Julian's transformation. Laura Garcia offered a tearful hug to Elena, grateful her daughter had found a path that allowed for cautious healing, instead of living in perpetual bitterness. Bit by bit, the shadows receded. With Sophia at the center, Julian and Elena found a renewed reason to champion the philanthropic projects that first brought them together. They began fundraising to support single mothers, particularly those who had faced betrayal or domestic turmoil. Each fundraiser felt like penance for Julian and a testament to resilience for Elena. Critics sneered, claiming it was a mere PR move, but the heartfelt testimonies of the women they helped told a different story. Over time, negative perceptions were eclipsed by genuine stories of hope and empowerment. Though the memory of the burned gown could never be erased, Elena learned to view it as part of her personal evolution. In therapy, she spoke at length about how she had once idolized her marriage, believing love alone could ward off betrayal. But the painful journey taught her that relationships need constant tending, that vulnerability can't be entrusted to someone unwilling to protect it. Julian, too, recognized he had to be an active participant in sustaining trust, rather than assuming loyalty was guaranteed. This self-awareness shaped their new dynamic, forging a stronger, albeit scarred, partnership. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Julian gently rocked Sophia to sleep. Elena watched from a nearby armchair, a soft smile curving her lips. So much had changed. The man before her was not the same one who had condoned Camilla's presence in their lives. He was more open, more attuned to the fragility of what they had built. She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment she began to believe in him again. Maybe it was incremental, seeping in as day after day he showed up, unwavering and sincere. Finally, on an anniversary of sorts 1 year after Sophia's birth, Elena and Julian arranged a private ceremony in their newly landscaped backyard. It wasn't a vow renewal per se, but a recommitment to building a harmonious life for their daughter. Their parents gathered, as did Andrew and a close circle of friends. Elena wore a simple, elegant dress, nothing extravagant, but symbolic of a fresh start. Julian, in a subdued navy suit, read a short pledge he had composed himself. Tears glistened in their eyes, not just from the heartbreak that once consumed them, but from gratitude that they found a road back to unity. In the grand arc of their story, the burning of the wedding dress was both an ending and a beginning. It ended the illusion of a flawless marriage and forced truths into daylight. Yet it also sparked a deeper understanding between Julian and Elena about the complexities of love, the danger of unchecked ambition, and the fierce resilience they both possessed. Though the path had been riddled with betrayals and regrets, their determination to grow, guided by the needs of their daughter, uncovered something more enduring than naive perfection, a mature, tested love, forged in fire, but shaped by empathy, atonement, and hope. Healing is rarely a straightforward journey. It's a winding path that demands courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to confront darkness head-on. Julian and Elena's story illustrates how betrayal can leave wounds that run deep, yet also how remorse, consistent effort, and shared responsibility can nurture second chances. Even the memory of a burned wedding dress, symbolizing a moment of searing pain, can eventually be overshadowed by new beginnings, precious family moments, and the quiet determination to rebuild. True redemption emerges when sincerity replaces empty apologies, and when daily acts of empathy and respect sustain that fragile spark of hope. If this saga of heartbreak, confrontation, and ultimate renewal resonated with you, please consider liking the video, sharing it with friends who relish dramatic, real-life tales, and subscribing to our channel for more gripping narratives. Your engagement encourages us to continue exploring raw, human stories that inspire growth and understanding.